Hi, I'm Teresa from Phoenix Gate Crafts, and today we are talking all about cross-stitch floss. I'm going to be keeping cross-stitch in particular in mind when I'm talking about floss, but pretty much everything in this video goes for embroidery as well. So, welcome to floss. Now, floss is a little bit different from thread. Now, you can keep floss on spools like regular thread, but the construction of floss and thread are a little bit different. I'm not going to go into details because that's pretty nitty-gritty into how things are spun and processed. But as you can see, thread is very thin, it is very strong, and although, yes, it can have some color to it, I have black and I have white right here, but you'll see that it is exactly one ply of something very sturdy versus this. When you pull the edge apart, you'll see that there are 6 strands of floss. Now, different floss sometimes does not have 6 strands. That is usually for something that is not cross stitch, or you can find, like, I believe Anchor brand is on spools similar to this, and so you get your length of whatever you want, cut it, and then if you want a second strand, you pull an equivalent length. But this is for sewing stuff together, whereas this is meant to be decorative. Now, that is not to say floss is not strong. This is your traditional DMC. See that? DMC right there? DMC. DMC is one brand. Anchor is another. Of 100% cotton colored floss. And the cotton is sturdy shit. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Now, other fibers can be a lot more delicate. In fact, pretty much all the other all the other fibers are much more delicate. For example, satin, acrylic, wool, silk. They also have glow-in-the-dark and what we call devil's pubes, which is metallic floss. And we call it devil's pubes because it is a devil to work with. It is really difficult because it doesn't behave the same way that the cotton does. Now, some people love DMC, some people hate it. I have pretty much all DMC brand floss, so that's what I'm going to be using as an example. But there's also like off-brands that you'll find. For example, this looks like DMC, but it is not. Because see how they look similar, but this is Siro, S-I-R-O. So this I got in a kit that was much cheaper than this. This actually came in a kit for darning socks, which is, funny. Cross stitch is ultimately paint by number pixel art. So when you get a pattern, you're going to have the image. This is a mock-up. This isn't the actual stitched product. And then you're going to have 2 things. You're going to have an actual grid that has, this is a color one. They can be in black and white as well. But they have little symbols in every single block on the grid because every single block on here is a stitch. And you can see that there's a dot here in the orange that represents the orange. There's a little M in the black that represents the black. And there is a little triangle in the green that represents the green. This is a pattern, by the way, that you can purchase in a kit around Halloween time. I will provide a link in the description, maybe. I don't have it up and available right now, but I will in time for Halloween. But the way you know what colors exactly to get on this, it also comes with a key. So you can see it's got the black M. If you did it in black and white, this is just what you'll see in each little block. The green little triangle, well, angle, I guess, and the dot in the orange. And more importantly, you can see right here the DMC number. Now, most patterns are in DMC. There are conversion charts for Anchor or other brands that you may get. Other brands might be like JMP Coats. I can't think of any. CXC. There's a bunch of them. I don't know them all. Now, here's the thing with DMC. They don't actually have official names. Like DMC 310 is black. We know that. White is blanc because DMC is a French company. They still produce their flosses in France, which does mean that the price is going up now that we have tariffs. Well, if we have tariffs. We're not doing political commentary. But we also have 310, DMC 905, and DMC 970. These are not the colors that I have right here, obviously, but you can see where the number is right here at the bottom. So this one is 3033. It doesn't matter the name of the color. The fact is that it's 3033. I need this for a separate pattern. This one is 3807, and this one is 166. Sometimes you'll see a little dot either down here, up here, or over here somewhere. That is dye lot. If you have very old floss, like these two are very old floss, the colors might have changed. And something you'll also notice with DMC in particular is that the numbers make no sense. And a lot of this has to do with production. Now, the dots mean, if you have dots on here, the dots mean that there has been a chemical change in the formula for that color, which may result in a color that is different. It is at that point technically the same color, but it might look a little bit different. Also, sometimes there's difference in batches. So if you're ever switching, like for example, in this pattern, if you're doing the orange and you run out partway through, you don't really want to switch to a new skein, hank, skein, whatever you want to call these things, kind of in the middle, because there's a good chance that you'll be able to see the difference when they're stitched out next to each other. Whenever possible, try to switch colors at the end of a color section. Like if you ran out after these eyes and you needed to switch to a new hank for the mouth, that'll be perfectly fine. Because that orange separates, it'll take a really good eye to see the difference. But if you switched halfway through, say, the orange, it'll probably be pretty obvious if you switched over. You could also do a blending thing, because typically we like to stitch in rows, like going up and down or side to side. So if you're going up and down and you're going to run out somewhere around here, you can start like alternating. You go down this one and then you skip one and then you go down the next one and then you skip one and you kind of blend it together that way. That's another option. There's always options. But just so you know, you can see a difference sometimes in bigger sections if you switch hanks because of color differences. Now, the numbers are funky sometimes. Like you'll see, right here, we have 166, 33, 30, 33, and 3807. I didn't pick this way. This is just kind of what was available here that I need to bobbinate. We'll talk about bobbinating in a minute, but they did not start at number 1. They started at like 100 or 101 and started going. And then they discontinued some colors. And then they picked up in a different spot. And then they discontinued some more colors, and then they picked up in a different spot. And then they discontinued some more colors. So you will notice that there is like a 1 through 45 or 55 or something like that. The exact numbers don't matter because it's probably going to change again in another year or two. And then you've got like 100 through 900 and something. And then you've got 3,000. And then you've got 3,300. And then you've got 3,700. And then you've got 3,800. So the numbers are all over the place. They are not in any kind of color order. I don't know if they were originally in any kind of color order, but they most certainly are not now. And just to kind of prove that point, I will show you my collection. Now, there are colors missing from my collection. I don't have the full set of DMC, which a lot of people have, but I do have a pretty good collection of it. And you will see, and yeah, I have some stuff that I'm using at the moment, and hence some empty spaces. But you will see, though, that there is no rhyme or reason to where these colors are. But you can see, like, there is some rhyme. There's, like, grays. Actually, you can't see this. There are some grays over here. But then you've got blues and reds. So you might see some greens together, and then some pinks, and then some greens, and then some blues and silvery colors. So there really isn't a true rhyme or reason to the DMC number order anymore, which is why, whenever possible, because patterns show colors in numbers, that is why it is often recommended when you're storing your floss to store them in some kind of number order. Whether you bobbinate, whether you do floss drops, or whether you just do little baggies or drawers or whatever you do. That way it's just easier to find your number that you need. Now, sometimes you don't get numbers. Really cheap floss does not have numbers. Sometimes different brands don't have numbers. In which case, I put some numbers here, ignore these. These were supposed to be equivalent numbers for a project and they weren't anywhere close. So ignore those numbers. For my floss that I don't have numbers for, I do put them in a sort of rainbow order and then totally mess it up. These I use whenever I have a pattern where color doesn't super matter. And friendly reminder, just like in knitting and crochet, a pattern is a suggestion. And on a pattern like this, where you know you need an orange, a black, and a green, does it matter really if you get 310, 905, and 970? No, it does not. You want 909, which I happen to know is another green, you can totally get 909 for another green. If you really want more of this limey green, or if this limey green is all you've got, go ahead and use this limey green. Whatever you want. This is your project. It can turn out wherever you want. Now, there are more complicated projects that look a lot more photoreal. For example, compare the complexity of this, which has 3 colors, to this one, which had like 100-ish colors, and it looks photoreal. This is of my dog. This was a picture I actually took, used pick2pat.com, not sponsored, to change it into a actual pattern, and then I stitched it and I framed it and I put it into the California State Fair where it was actually displayed. I didn't win anything, but I got it displayed. That one, you might want to be a little bit more precise in the exact colors you get if you want it to look that kind of photoreal. But sometimes you can totally just swap out and it's no big deal. As you can see, I like to do bobbins. It is clearly my preference. But I'm going to show you a few different methods or at least talk about a few different methods for storing your floss. Now, the first one, I really don't have much of a display of it. This is going to be the representation for it, because you can store your floss in bags. Some people use Ziploc bags that they punch a hole in so that way they can keep them on little rings like this. So you can keep your bag, and the bag would have like numbers 1 through 10 in them, for example. And then the next bag will have 11 through 20, or however many. You know, this could be the 100s, this could be the 200s, this could be the 300s, or whatever numbers kind of work for that. And then they'll be able to keep it on here, just on the ring, and they can search through in number order. Now, you could also keep them, there are fancy little boxes with little sections in them that you can keep floss. You could just keep them in a drawer. I know a lot of people do that, or a little sewing kit kind of deal. It's very flexible, and I used to keep my floss basically in whatever packaging it came in. The problem is you don't necessarily know what numbers you're going to have until you look through. Things can get rearranged as you pull things out. So for example, if I pull this out, use a bit, put it back, it's not in the exact same place it was. So sometimes numbers can get a little out of order. It's hard to see at a glance exactly what you've got. So some people like this, some people don't. This is a really good way. If you have a lot of a color, such as black, it's very easy to keep the multiples together this way. But honestly, keeping the multiples together is not really a problem. You can always do 2 different methods, like you could do floss drops and have your spares in a plastic bag, or you can do bobbins and have your spares in a plastic bag. I'll show you what I do later. Friendly reminder that whatever works for you, even if it doesn't work for me, but it works for you, that is awesome. The next option is floss drops. Again, I don't like this because see how tangled everything can get. Now, there are dealios that are little, they look like droplets. I'll see if I can put a picture here, where you have the floss drop for the main drop, and then you have your little extra hole for whatever 6 strands you're using, because we typically don't use 6 strands. We'll use 1 strand, 2 strands, 3 strands. Occasionally you'll be required to use 4 strands, or maybe even all 6. Depends on the pattern and what it tells you to do. But these are looped. I will show you with this one. You can pull this. I will just show you with this one. So what you do is you take your floss and you fold it in half. So you have a little loop. And then you poke it, just the loop, through the hole for the associated color. You can also put your numbers on the floss drop. This one came in a dimensions kit. And then you open the loop and you pull the tail through and you pull it up. Now, you can use a needle, and then you go to the area where you've got the little loop that goes across, and then you can pick out one thread and pull it separate. I don't know if you can really see that. It's a very small thing. But you can pull one thread out and then you just pull it out. The problem is, for me, is it always winds up kinked up and kind of twisty. Even though this is straight. And it does that because basically when you're pulling it out, you are doing to it what we do with scissors on ribbons to make it curly at Christmas time for packages. And I don't like that. And also, if you're doing that, you have to pull out one at a time. I prefer to pull out two at a time sometimes. So I don't like it. That's why I don't like it. But it does look very pretty. And if you have a place where you can dangle them, they look very pretty because you can see the colors. You also, the little bobbins have holes, so you can put them on the key ring for your project, and you can just have it like this. Some people will put this on a doorknob or something, or like a light or anything that's kind of high so it can dangle. There are also, they look like jewelry boxes where they have a portion that opens and you can have your floss all organized on drops, one in front of the other. It does look beautiful. I don't find them the most practical or functional. And as you can see, whenever I have them, I just loop them around. And when I need something, I unwind it, kind of like a bobbin. And then I pull off what I need. So that leaves us with my favorite, which I'm going to go into detail on, which is bobbins. For me, bobbinating is, in fact, its own hobby. And this one, you get these cases. You can get these, you can get the ones for beading. This one was actually in the cross stitch and embroidery section. And this one has two sides. So you open one on this side and you open the other one on this side. And this is actually all the floss I need for a project. Now, winding a bobbin can be a pain in the butt because for the bobbins, you have these little things. Now, some people like to put the number right here next to the hole. And then you can put it sideways into the thingy, which is kind of prettier because you can see the color a little bit better. I like to put it right here. Now, as you've already seen, with these teeny tiny little stickers, they can come off pretty easily. There are also cardboard ones where writing on them is easier or sticking stickers to them is easier. And there are official DMC stickers for bobbins. There are also pip and chip bobbins where their colors are already written on there. The problem with those is that if you have more, like you see all this black right here, these are 40, they were 40 bobbins of DMC 310, which is black. There's not quite that many anymore. I have used some, but you can't have 40 bobbins of that, which I keep all together. You can see I have two of the same color here. I have like 3 of the same color right here, 2 of the same color right here, 3 of the same color right here. So I like to keep the duplicates together. Just keep them in number order. You know exactly what you have. This is all a project that I'm keeping together. I'm actually thinking about abandoning this project, in which case I can do a certain number right here, and then on the other side I can do the rest over there. There's lots of ways to organize things. I do have another one of these that is full of a different project that I am doing. And actually this bobbin that I'm going to do right now is going to be needed for that one. So what I use for numbers instead of these, because as you can see, this is coming off. It just happens. You have to accept it. It's going to happen no matter, because things don't like to stick to plastic. But I like using longer things so that when you wrap your floss, it'll keep it on, even if it starts bending its way off. Because it will. It's just a feature of plastic and stickums. So I've got these which are just pricing stickers for garage sales. I think they're a 1/2 inch by 3/4 inch or something like that. Maybe a 1/2 inch by 1 inch. I don't really remember. But they fit. See how they fit. And then I just put the number that I want to do, which I'm going to do this one, which is 3033. And then I go steal a pen from my husband, and I write, I'm going to do this one right here. And I'm going to do it not on that. I just write it. Make sure you can read it. And then I peel it off and I stick it right in the middle here. Now there is usually a little factory thing that's a little texture piece on one side. So do it on the other and just use muscles. Also use a pen that's not like a fountain pen kind of deal so you don't smear. It'll dry faster and you won't have to smear it. Now, you can bobbinate by hand. That's totally doable. But why bobbinate by hand when there are little gizmos you can use? That will make it go so much faster. And what you do, you see this right here and see this right here? You put that on it and you move other crap out of the way. And now it'll stay stable for the most part. It might move around a little bit, but you ideally have 2 hands and you can do that. And there is this little thing right here. One end is bigger than the other. They look like the little pins from cribbage. Don't lose this. I stick it right there. But what you do is you line up the holes, and there is a little line right here. You don't have to put it inside. It's just a little bit more sturdy and secure this way if you do. Line up the holes and push the pin down so that it doesn't come out. And now you can easily do that. Now, it doesn't matter what kind of use you're doing. If you're just pulling for use right now, or if you're going to do a floss drop, or if you're going to do a bobbin, there is a correct way to pull from a hank like this. So you find the numbers, and you find the end that's coming from the numbers. It is like this all the time, especially with DMC. Here's the numbers, here's the end. On this one, here's the numbers, here's the end. They're like this intentionally. And also because here's the numbers, you can always double check that you've got the same number. Because sometimes you're not thinking and you put the wrong number. It happens. There are a lot of people who realize they've misnumbered a bobbin and are trying to find out. So what you do is you pull this and it comes out smoothly. You might get some tangling at the end. I like to hold this plastic and this one. And then what I do is I cross down here. I don't want to put it up in these because then I will get confused over, well, one, they can fill up. But this, you just go like this a couple times, keep some tension, which also stabilizes the base. And then you just hold on to it kind of like this, keep some tension, and you start twisting. Now, if all of a sudden it snags somewhere in here, stop right away and then look and then look down here and untangle. But as you can see, this is going pretty quickly. And you can get it nice and neat, and you can kind of move like this to kind of organize and choose where it's going to go on the bobbin. And you just go down and up and down and up as much as you want. I'm kind of going faster than I usually do. I like them to be kind of smooth and flat. Make sure you pay attention at the end so it doesn't all bunch up in the middle, if you care about that kind of thing. I do. Oop. I usually do this on my other one where it's a little bit of a tighter hold. Oops. Be careful you don't get it in the wrong area. But you see how it is holding that little sticker on nicely? And see how this is kind of like a little divot? You can fill that in. DMC is 8.7 meters, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, especially if you're used to knitting or crochet where you're dealing with 100 grams of yarn and a lot more yardage. And then you can just throw these away. They're plastic, they're not really recyclable. And when you get to the end, just pop that pin out, get it facing forward, go around, and then stick it inside the little crack, and then you can put it anywhere in here in order. Now I'm going to leave this out because it doesn't go in here. It goes with my other project, but I can do the exact same thing with these two to organize my floss. And these two are actually going to go on the other side because they don't go with this project, they go with the other one. And whenever I stop using this, I put that back in. Take it out. I have a little baggie that has everything together, my bobbins, this, and I prefer slightly longer sections. So I've got the bits of those sections that I've taken out. Here's a couple of frequently asked questions that a lot of people ask about. First, where do I get floss that's a good price? Especially now that Joann Fabrics has basically gone out of business. Well, you can still get it at Michael's or Hobby Lobby or pretty much any other craft store's probably going to have at least some. You can also get it online. You can purchase directly from the DMC website, but you can also purchase from this place. My favorite, I am not sponsored, but it is 123stitch.com. The number is 123, then stitch.com. They specialize in embroidery and cross-stitch materials. And they have this awesome thing. Because here's the thing. When you have a pattern, just like this one that I showed you, you notice that there's this is the number of stitches you're going to use. Sometimes they'll tell you how many hanks or skeins that you're going to need. And it's oftentimes one. There might be two, there might be three, there might be 40. But, you're going to need a good amount. So when you're on the Michael's website trying to pick floss, if you're not physically going in, it is a huge pain in the ass because you have to go into the search site, type DMC 158, for example, and then you click it, and then it'll send you to a group that contains that color. And remember, the numbers don't make sense, so you wouldn't necessarily know what group to look for a particular number if you don't already know what that color is supposed to be. Some patterns tell you and some patterns don't. You're going to be spending forever doing that because then you're going to have to, once you find it, if it brings it up. If it doesn't bring it up, by the way, it doesn't have it. Michaels doesn't have it. And then you're going to have to backtrack to the search bar and then do the same thing for the next color. So 502, for example. And yes, I am picking numbers that are like 502 is this one. So it's a huge pain in the butt. I don't like doing that. So 123 Stitch has a mass add feature. So you can choose if you want to get like one of each, two of each. So if you've got something that has like one of every color except for a couple of different colors, you can choose one of each. Just type in with a space in between each one all the colors you need for a project. Just go down the list on the pattern, and then you can like, if you need two of, say, 166, you can just put it on there twice, and it will, at the end, always double check, but at the end you can always just add them. And then something you need 40 of, so like I needed 40 of black 310, you can just go back, put 310 on there and then go into your final thing and then put that you need 40 of them. It's not that hard. And the cool thing with 123 Stitch, now Joann's was notorious for this. I don't know if Michael's has this problem, but if you're going to order online for delivery, it oftentimes, no matter what you do, it's going to cost like $10 for delivery. And you have to purchase a minimum of 2 of each color. 123 Stitch has no minimum requirement, and they have awesome flat rate shipping of, I think it's like $3.49 in the United States, which is just friggin' awesome. I love it. And the cool thing is, most of the time, I'll purchase it like 1 a.m. because I'm a night owl. The next business day, they will have it filled and out for shipping. And then I'll get it usually within 3 to 5 shipping days. It is awesome and I love it. I highly recommend them. They should totally sponsor me. Please, 123 Stitch, sponsor me. I love you. You're awesome. I don't see why they would sponsor me because I totally give them good word of mouth as it is. So here's another question of how long should you cut your floss? I might have to do this one physically to explain it. But what you do is you pull, and you pull this out so your arm is straight, and then you take this end and stick it to your nose. That is about a yard. It's not an accurate way of measuring a yard. But yeah, you stick this to your nose and just hold this one out to the side so that this is taut like this. And then you cut it here. And that's how long it needs to be. And by the way, one of the reasons I really like this is you can cut a section, pull off the strands that you need, and then you can rewind them and have them sticking in here. For example, I did that here. Right here, and the main one that's connected to the main body of color is still down here, but you can see I just whoop, whoop, and whoop, and then this is 913, which goes right here. It keeps it all perfectly neat. Now, the last question is how to deal with knots, which you think is a question for floss. It kind of is and it kind of isn't. Because here's the big thing with knots. They're not actually knots. They are loops that tighten. So here's the thing. I've got the setup for a potential knot right here. Because if I pull this portion tight, see how it grabs that. And if it continues and this stays here, it's going to catch. You see how it's kind of catching right here when I pull? That is actually what starts a knot. So what you have to do is when you realize there's a knot, and I'm going to show you more about catching knots, you have to pull it straight. And then you can continue pulling. Here, this is a good example. See how it's just caught right here? It's just grabbing those. You need to kind of pull it out. And this happens when you're stitching. There is a special way to hold your thread while you're stitching, which I will show you when I go through processing, which is the next video, how to process through a pattern or a project. Hold tight, I'm going to give a better explanation in the next video on that, but that's all that a knot is it's where a loop has been grabbed by another loop in your floss. So what you just have to do is you either have to pick it apart, or there's a way of holding it that you can pull and your knot will come out. I will actually link a video for somebody with a tutorial on how to do that in the description box of this video if that is a problem you are having. But the best thing to do is just prevent knots. When you feel something gathering, stop pulling so that way you can loosen it and undo it. Prevention is so much better than trying to detangle any amount of yardage. I suppose I could go into showing you how to thread a needle. The problem is I don't need a needle threaded right now, because that's not really a process thing. That's just kind of its own thing. You know what? I think I'm going to do a real quick tutorial on how to thread a needle in a different video at some other point yet to be determined. Just because it's really hard with this current video setup to do and show. I would need a big old needle with like yarn to show you. It is, honestly, it's just like yarn, but you can wet the end, pinch it, and push it through. Yeah, threading a needle is its own video. I'll show that separately. So, I hope you found this helpful. Happy crafting. Bye.